Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Patty, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to talk to you about your business and about who you are. But before we go into your business, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from and your upbringing and what makes Patty Patty?
Okay, sure. So I'm Patty Brown, but my business name is Patricia Brown Designs. Obviously, it's my full name. I was born in Miami, but moved to Vero Beach, Florida with my parents in 1977. It's where I reside today. It's where my design firm is. And I love Vero Beach. I'm a boater, and so this is kind of my place.
Wonderful. How far from Miami is where you're at now?
Yeah, I'm 2.5 hours north of Miami and 20 miles north of Palm Beach, so on the Atlantic side.
I've never had a bad time in Miami, so
yeah,
it's always a good time. My wife is on the other side. She's like, I'm not going to Miami anymore. My hair frizzes up, so she stays home when we go down.
You got to go with it, right?
Just lean into the frizz. Yes, absolutely. Okay, and then you started your design firm in 92, is that correct?
That is correct.
So it started as just cabinets or?
Yeah, so I started out in the industry. I came from a marketing background at the beginning. I was in radio sales, and I had a friend that had a kitchen and bath high-end showroom, right? And I didn't even know a career like that existed at the time. But she said, hey, would you like to do sales for me? And I kind of looked at her showroom and I thought, wow, I would love this. And I knew I was a creative long before I realized you could make a career out of it, right? As a kid, I was creative. So I jumped at that chance. And so I started in the kitchen and bath design side. And I started immediately learning back in those days, which would have been in the 80s, they had drafting boards. And I fell in love with the drafting board and the fact that I could design these incredible rooms. Kitchen is the main room of anyone's home and the master bathroom. And I was doing them for a high end, so multi-million-dollar homes like DuPont. And so this was pretty exciting for a young girl. And so I jumped in with both feet, continued towards that path on educating myself in design. And as I continued that, I decided that once the clients were asking for me all the time and I became really the designer there, why not open my own showroom? That was the logical evolution of anybody's career. And so I did that. I opened my first showroom over on Vero Beach in the high rent district. And it was, I talked to a PR company who we were trying to come up with a name. And, I was like, oh, how about Designs by Patricia Louise? And they're like, no, that sounds like a hair salon. And they're like, what is your full name? And I said, Patricia Brown. They're like, that's it. So I thought it was good that I went to a PR firm first because I really didn't have the clue on the marketing side of it. I was only 29. And so I did that first and they came up with a name and it was Patricia Brown Fine Cabinetry. So I opened that in 1992. At the same time that I had two little boys, so 2 and 4 at the time. They're now men. But that was the beginning of me, Patricia Brown, my career for me personally. So I needed to have my name out there at that point because I was making a name for myself, right?
Right.
So
But you'd already had you had a track record of doing fine cabinetry.
Yes, as a kitchen and bath designer. But I quickly got bored with that. And so I started to move in. First, it was lighting design because I realized when I was photographing my work that and that's another thing. It was like super important for me. I just had an instinct of that from marketing, how important it was to photograph my work and put it in national competitions. I was building a national name for myself before there was any internet, really, and it was a good thing I did, because when the internet rolled around, I was ready. But what I realized when I was doing the photo shoots is that most kitchens, architects really don't design lighting. They put a grid on a floor plan, and then it's left up to the electrician, which is not really what you want to leave it up to. So I learned very quickly that we couldn't get a good photo if the lighting wasn't good. So that set me off on my next path and diversification of who I am as a designer. And I started studying lighting design because I had to get my continuing education. So I started learning lighting design and how to measure it to hit a space correctly, which is very mathematical, which a lot of people are afraid of. So nobody was really doing it. And that became a diversification of services that I provided. Then from there, I wanted to expand and do whole house design. So I ended up having the opportunity to do that due to, at the time, there was a grandfathering clause that if you could sit for the 2-day exam and pass it, you were grandfathered in when they went from decorators to designers. I jumped at that chance. I did that. I got my professional license, which allowed me to do anything from whole house design, professional design, to commercial design. There's no project I can't work on with that.
Wonderful.
So I ended up having, my license, my professional license through the state of Florida, an architectural board. And then I had my certified kitchen designer and certified bath designer and lighting. So I became very specialized in all areas of design.
Wonderful. Lighting is very important to some people, not everybody. Some people are just put a ceiling fan in the kitchen and go. But if you're going to spend a lot of money on a kitchen design, you want it lit properly. You want everything that's there under the cabinets and all that other stuff. So I like.
Well, and with the new LEDs that came around in the 2000s for residential, and now that's all there is.
Right.
Even lay people that they've had bad lighting because LED colors can really make you sick. So many of us have been in that room full of LED lighting that it just feels terrible.
Right.
And it can literally make someone have headaches. It's, so now, most lay people are fully aware that, wow, you can do this and know how to instruct us to get the proper lighting. So even sometimes I'm hired to just do lighting design, or to even come into a home and re-lamp the whole thing correctly.
Right.
So,
interesting.
yeah,
all right.
Another diversification.
Let's rewind all the way back to you. So you're 29 years old.
Yeah.
You're going to open your studio. You're doing sales today, and you're going to open your studio, and you're in the high rent district. You're going to take on. Did that rent come with a personal guarantee?
Did the what was that? Oh, yes.
Did the rent come with so you had to personally guarantee the rent?
I did.
Which was more money than you had in the bank, probably, if everything went south.
Yeah.
And it's a huge commitment, right?
Yeah.
It's
If you take that step, you got to believe
numbers, commercial rents, especially near the beach.
Right.
Not even kind of cheap. Like, there's nothing about it that, like, you can't scratch your head and say, man, that's super affordable. I can pull that off. That's got to be a scary moment. How did that make you feel, and what were some of the things that gave you the confidence to say, you know what? I know that I'm raising 2 kids. I know this is crazy, and I know if it goes under, I'm on the hook for a ton of money, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, because I think it's a sink or swim moment, right? Like, if you're born with that silver spoon in your mouth, then it doesn't matter. Someone's always going to catch you, right? But as an entrepreneur, right, you're going to step out, and at some point, there is no safety net, right? So it is a sink or swim moment, fight or flight. And, so what is the worst thing that can happen, right? The worst thing that could happen is I fail. But I guess you have to believe in yourself enough, and you have to educate yourself enough in whatever endeavor that you're doing, that you have the confidence to know that unless the world changes, which we're going to talk about because it did, right? You have the ability to do what you're setting out to do. Like I had the background. I had worked for somebody for 7 years, and then I was ready to do
Right.
it, and I had the confidence to do that. Scary as it is, every evolution in my career has been scary. Right. So I think entrepreneurs are adrenaline junkies to some degree. If we live that safe life, we're doing a 9 to 5, right? And we're
Right.
there every week with our paycheck and nothing ever changes. But I think most entrepreneurs are adrenaline junkies. And I think that knowing you've got that responsibility to you and your family to make the rent, you step up. And you do that, and you do whatever it takes to do that. But it is scary. You're only as good as your last sale, right? Which can become draining for some people, and it can cause burnout, which I think is why the diversification of what I've done is to protect my company and make it sound. Because if one ball falls, are they all going to? If you have all your eggs in one basket, as they say, not a good business model, right? I learned that, and we all learned that. Many family businesses realized that during the recession, because many of them went down, and you have to be ready to dance with the shifting times. And in order to keep afloat, you've got to be somewhat diversified in any career.
Yes.
Right?
And I think for me, I do it to keep myself sane.
Oh,
Because
you and me both.
Yeah. If I'm like, people are always like, why do you keep jumping on these new projects? I'm like, well, there's downtime in some of my other projects. And if I have downtime, well.
And I never did until the recession. Like I was constantly carrying multiple projects, right?
Right.
And when the recession hit, everybody had always said from the time I started in my showroom in 1992, you want to be in the high-end market, it'll never be touched. Well, guess what, folks? Look at Ford Motor Company. I mean, we all were touched, right?
Right.
Like it can happen, and it did happen.
Yes.
So that was another evolution for me as the young entrepreneur now, 15 years later, whatever it was, realizing that, wow, I was vulnerable, but I ended up for the first time in my life having time to evolve, learn, gather that new world thing that I had to learn. And I started 3 internet companies, right? Because I'm an old dog. I had a AutoCAD department. I didn't have to know AutoCAD, right? I would draw it up on my wonderful little drafting board and hand it to them. All of a sudden, I don't have an AutoCAD department. And I'm talking about taking what I do out of ground zero, which is in Florida, where the housing bubble collapsed. How am I going to do that? The internet. So I better start learning again, right? How am I going to learn? I'm going to start 3 internet companies. That's a sink or swim. Let's do this. Right.
And what are those 3 new companies? Are they all 3 active today?
No, let me tell you that. Okay. So I looked at the only assistant I had left was the AutoCAD person. I said, you're going to show me AutoCAD. She didn't want to, but I'm paying you and you got to show it to me. Didn't take me too long to learn it, which was surprising because I was scared of the whole computer thing. And then I looked at her and I said, we got to take what we do outside of the borders of Florida because there's no work here, right? So, hey, ignorant as it was, I'm like, let's start a virtual design company. Sounded like a smart idea for me. So I started professionalkitchenandbathplans.com. Great name, says what it is. And then we're like, hey, well, why not let's sell product? So pdbhomestore.com, that was before like Amazon and One Kings Lane, all those venture capitalist companies. So I thought, well, why not? So I did that, and we were building those sites when these SEO guys said, you need a blog. I'm like, well, what is a blog? Well, a blog helps to push your brands.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, what do you do with a blog? Well, you write about what you know. Well, okay, I can do that. So at the time, none of these. So I had professionalkitchenandbathplans.com, no Patricia Davis Brown on that, pdbhomestore.com, again, not my name, and then digthisdesign.net, because I was into being in the present and the current situation. I found myself yogi. So I had 3 companies. I had learned that having my name out there isn't really at this stage of the game. I want to be able to sell them, right? So anyways, I went into this endeavor and I really was hustling, trying to make these things happen. And I'd always said to the assistant, look, this is only a stepping stone. This is a learning thing for us. I had the right attitude, right? And then in 2009, the end of 2009, closed my big showroom because it didn't make sense, right? And I closed it. I opened a home office. Somebody I was working with at the time hired me to do a mega mansion on the ocean. So that all of a sudden catapulted me back into business. Don't have the big brick and mortar hanging over me. Now I'm navigating through recession, through all this. I'm learning about these internet companies. And then we roll around to 2011 and I'd already, my company, I started getting design contracts again and working from a home office, different MO, and then changed the name to Patricia Davis Brown Designs because I'm now a whole house interior designer. So then I get a phone call one day, and it was 2011 from a company, a PR agency for Delta faucets. And the girl asked me, are you familiar with Delta faucets? And I'm like, yeah, I would never spec them because it's not a high-end product, And she says, well, we want to fly you out to New York City to introduce you to Brizo, our luxury brand line. And we're flying you and 20 other architect designers. We're aligned with Jason Wu, the fashion designer. We're going to attend New York Fashion Week. We're going to go to his show. We're going to do an after party, and you're going to meet him. Get to ask him questions. Wonderful. And I was like, what? And why was this? It was the blog. I had a blog. So all of a sudden, I'm an influencer. I didn't even know what an influencer was. All of a sudden, I'm an influencer. Then I started realizing, with One's Kings Lane and Amazon, that the others really weren't the business, but the blog was. So I I had thrown a lot at it, but I said, you know what, I'm going to focus in on the blog because opportunities kept coming in the influencing world. I was invited to New York City with another collaboration with 4 bloggers. And, I started picking the brains of one of these, and just pretty soon I started realizing, and at this point I had hired somebody to manage Dig This Design, which was okay. I learned a lot from her, but then I realized after talking to the people that have been making money in it, that I needed to get rid of her and kind of take it back over, which I did. And fast forward to today, Dig This Design is a platform out in the universe that marketers reach out to me every single day to give me a post to put on the blog with links. And we make sure that it's all legal and it's all, we purchase our photography. But it's multiple income streams through this little blog. It's anything from, if I do a product review, I'm writing it. And I'm doing that review for a brand. I'm paid for that. I'm paid to write. I'm paid to do video. I'm paid for just having a billboard in the sky. So it's a continuous, every morning, my morning starts opening up my emails and going through the opportunities and the money coming in on this little platform. So that's what that did for me. And that, again, Dig This Design is a business. It's not a blog about Patricia Davis Brown Designs. I've got Patricia Davis Brown Designs.com, which is my portfolio and my design firm. digthisdesign.net is separate. Could be sold tomorrow if I wanted to, but they'd have to offer me a lot because it's a passive income that continues to snowball.
And you can take leads from that one and sell them design services if they're in the right area, if everything lines up properly.
Now it kind of exploded into this influencer.
Yes.
And I've been hired by different brands. I've sat on boards. I was a K&B insider for a year, paid to travel around and talk about designs at shows. I still speak, and it just catapulted me because I came from the design industry, and now I happen to have a blog. And it just keeps the opportunities keep coming. I do business consultation, exactly on what we're speaking about now. How did I do what I did? Can we hire you by the hour? And after looking at what it is they need me for, I'm able to write a proposal, and they buy so many hours of my consultation with them and their team. With people like Schneider Electric, that's an international company that I spoke at their summit. So, it's interesting where my career has taken me just because of being bold, not being afraid, stepping out. Obviously, I educated myself. Obviously, I got my certifications and my professionalism and all that helped me to do this. I entered international design competitions. I made a national brand all along my career. But I think the thing that made me create the multiple revenue streams was the experiences that I had with the recession, and realizing sustainability is growth. You've got to keep growing and keep changing.
Right.
And then when the pandemic hit, my numbers on Dig This Design just leaped up, doubled because of the pandemic. And I was set up to work from a home office anyway. So it was all good. I continued on. I was strong.
Absolutely. Patty, you said a lot of things there. And one of the things that I want to go back to is opportunity, right? You wake up every morning, you have all these opportunities in your inbox. And when you're up and coming, my recommendation is take advantage of every possible opportunity that comes your way. But there becomes a point where you're paying the bills and everything, and you're trying to scale, that you get opportunities that might not be the best for your business. And as an entrepreneur, it's kind of hard to turn those down, right? Is that something you've had to deal with? And if it is, how do you deal with saying it's really not where I want to take my direction? For me, it's one of the hardest things that I have to do. I'm just now getting to the point in my life that I can say, you know what, it's a great opportunity, and I wish I had the cycles for it, but I'm gonna have to step away. Yeah. How do you deal with that? And then at what step in your journey do you think that an entrepreneur should say, you know what, I'm not going to take that opportunity because the ship that I'm on is headed this direction, and that would take my focus off of it?
Yeah. Well, on all young people that come to me, I always tell them that they need to read a book called The Sociopath Next Door.
Okay.
What the book is about is narcissism and sociopaths and the difference between the two. And why is this book important? Because as a person in business, you're going to run across personality types that you need to identify to protect yourself, especially if you hold a professional license. And even to this day, I get caught because the worst personality is that sociopath, and they're very, very clever of disguising. But what you need to know about a sociopath, if you're already in it and in a contract with them, because they can put you out of business, right, is having the maturity and the understanding to realize, is it worth the fight, or do I walk away? Because they have more time. Their whole focus is to destroy. Sometimes it's just best to say, you know what, it's all good. And let's just, you're right, I'm wrong, goodbye, right? It's learning how to navigate these personality types to protect yourself. As we get more mature in our careers and we put ego aside, because we've learned the damage that a person that is not the right fit in a contract can wreak on your company, on your reputation. And you got to learn not to fight. If you recognize this person, because like there's the con man's going to be bragging about their conquest, right? Listen, right? Red flags. If he's bragging about how he ripped somebody off, you don't want that person as a customer you know. There's also people that suffer from, some mental illness. If you see that, and that's going to end up becoming a problem, trying to identify the personalities you don't want to sign up as a client is the best protection of not of being able to walk away. And it is difficult. I still have that problem. I see an opportunity and I can't wait to jump at it. But sometimes you find yourself in it and you just want to find the quickest way to the door with the least amount of damage. That's the maturity of being a mature business person. And maybe that comes with a practice. Maybe that comes with years experience. Another thing I have found, especially in the field that I am in as a professional interior designers, you have professional architects, professional engineers, and we're all have state license. And many of those people, because many of them, if you're in it long enough, you run into these types, and many of them let that experience make them quit. And that's sad.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes you just don't feel you have the skin, the toughness to stand back up. Take a moment. Take a moment when you've been knocked down and take a breath and reevaluate what it is that you learned from that. Do you need to fix your contract? Do you need to, what is it that you need to do as a professional? Because really, as a professional, anybody can make a complaint and you've got to get an attorney and go before the board because the state's coming for you. As sad as that is, that's the reality. And at some point, maybe you don't need that professional license. Maybe you just want to be a decorator, and then they can't touch you. So there's many facets to that question. But I think that the best answer to that is reading that book, trying to understand people before you're hooked into them.
Right. I'm definitely going to check that one out. And you've hit so many good points there. Mental illness is something that is very close to me and my family. So I tend to lean into, especially when it comes to staff, and I definitely overextend.
Yes, I do too. I'm a fixer. Yeah.
All of those things, especially when it comes to addiction and mental health, I overextend my graciousness there.
I do too. I'm a fixer.
I've been burned 100% of the time, and
100%, right?
And I'm not going to stop doing it. I'm not going to stop doing it. Because people did it for me, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm not going to stop. It's one thing in business that if I had a shareholder once, we had my predecessor was dying of cancer, and I went to my largest shareholder. I'm like, I don't know what to do here, man. He's coming in, he's barely here, going through chemo and all this stuff, and it's really, really bad. He said, don't let the company go bankrupt. But keep him here as long as he wants to stay here. So, and I hold that kind of world very near and dear to my heart. If companies aren't willing to stand by their staff at their worst time, then that's not a company I want to be with.
You can be proud of that because it shows character. I mean, ultimately, you may, somebody may make it difficult for you, especially if we're talking employees, which that's another thing to talk about.
Yes.
But I've learned how to avoid that pretty well. I do a lot of outsourcing because you know what? I'm not a great manager of people. I don't want to manage people. It's not what I do. I know my forte. And I'm tired. I don't like to babysit, so that's a whole other question. But with that being said, yes, like you, if I see somebody in trouble, I'll reach out, and 100% of the time, it never really turns out in my favor, but that's okay. But when it comes to signing up a new contract with a person you don't need to rescue, and they may want to hurt you, that's where that book comes into play, and studying those personalities. I actually wrote a blog post, how to tell how to identify like a difficult client. And it talked about all those personalities that you want to avoid. And that's the best way to protect yourself from taking on a bad client. Employees are a whole other thing.
Well, to me, I think every entrepreneur, their first client is their employees, and then from there, it's their other
Yeah.
clients.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting because I've never done design work like you do, but I've definitely done web design, and it, it's a hard business designing something that's very subjective, turning it over to somebody. You like this or not? What do you like? What don't you like? And then moving forward, and I find that most of the time, and I don't know if this is different in your world. They're like, I don't care what it looks like. I just want it to be amazing. They don't give any direction at all, and but they don't like anything that you've shown them either. So I couldn't be a designer as a trade full time. It
No,
would
I
definitely
hear you.
destroy me.
I look, I'll give my professional opinion, but at the end of the day, it's your home,
You're
it's
gonna live
your
there.
room. You hired me as a professional to not yes you, but to tell
Right.
you why. So usually when I take on a project, let's say it's a kitchen, I will present 3 preliminary plans of a footprint, right?
Right.
So let's talk about this. And maybe through the discussion, we come up with a fourth because ultimately it needs to be your kitchen, right?
Right.
So I tell them, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I can only point things out. Um, and if they're bound and determined that they want to have something that I would not agree with, I say, it's yours. And we'll do
Yeah.
that. I will, and we move forward. You
Absolutely.
know,
You're never gonna use that lazy Susan, but I'll install it for
I'll put it in there.
you.
Whatever it is, it is ultimately yours. I can only
Right.
take you out of the box, let you feel it. And if you're bound and determined to be in the box, then I'm just here to facilitate the design so that now it puts everyone on the same page when
Right.
getting bids or whatever. I'm a tool at that
Wonderful.
point.
So were your parents entrepreneurial, or is this a spirit that just is in you that comes from nowhere? Like where does that entrepreneurial spirit come
Yeah, I mean, I think that my dad was a retired Air Force officer and became a school teacher. So
from? Okay.
9 to 5 job. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, which I can't identify with at all. So I mean, and to get a little more personal, my dad was also a functioning alcoholic. So it developed who I am today, which is I'm a perfectionist. I'm a child of an alcoholic, and I think that I knew early on that I would be best served, and so would my clients, me being on my own, because I'm driven. Um, I have an entrepreneurial spirit because I am a perfectionist. If I've got a boss that is, in a box, then I can't expand and I can't
Right.
keep perfecting my craft. So that forced me to become the entrepreneur. And I think it is where we're raised in our experiences. Nothing bad about my dad because he fixed himself, but it did mold me to be
Right.
the person that I am, the driven person that I am. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
I'm glad that functioning alcoholic can have some positive
Oh,
outcome with
absolutely.
a
I mean,
daughter.
I think somebody that fixes that to the best that they can, right? You're
Yep.
admitting you have a problem and then you do something about it. Nothing's ever perfect, but and then you have to look at, I mean, people that blame their parents all the time make me crazy because it's
Yes.
like, dude, they did the best they could. Like both my parents basically were orphans, right?
Right.
My dad became an Air Force officer and they did the best that they could do with what they were given. And they created me that I think I was a great parent. And, my son's a doctor, I'm a perfectionist, right?
Right.
I'm that because of what I had. And also the confidence that they gave me in myself. They did that. Nobody else did that.
Right. Absolutely. I
They
think the
did
number
that.
one thing a parent can do is create self-esteem in their kids. Right.
Self-esteem. I think the worst thing, yes, my dad may have been a recovered alcoholic, but on the other hand, he wasn't the dictator of the family that didn't give you a voice, right? We were
Right.
allowed to express ourselves in our family. And I've seen the result of some people not being able to let their children, like, it's my way or no way. And that you can't do that with a child, because then they're always going to think they can't speak,
Right.
and have an opinion. And I believe very firmly in people being allowed to have an opinion, whether you're a boss, whether you're a parent. That's important to have
All
that
right.
culture.
Absolutely. It's very important and rewarding if you can, recognize that you're doing that for your family as well,
Yeah.
like giving them a voice. So I
Yeah.
want to dig in on perfection, right? You're a perfectionist. That's
Yes,
a
I am.
difficult trait to live with. Um, what do you say, or how do you deal with perfection as the enemy of done,
The perfection is the enemy of what?
of completed, done, right? So a lot of times perfectionists can't seem to get the job done because it's
Yeah.
not quite perfect, right? They're still always polishing. Do you
Yeah, I
have that
think
problem,
that
or can you
no,
get to the point that you're done?
I'm a completer. But I think I know what you're saying, but that I think involves more of like an ADD personality. They
Okay.
can't see, they don't want to finish it because they know it's not going to be perfect. My personality is such that, yeah, I may fail at this, but if I don't do it, I don't evolve. Right. I
Right.
learned that as the entrepreneur. Like, I got to personally sign for these loans, and I may fail and I may disappoint not only me but my family, but if I don't do it, then I only stay here. So, and as a career of projects, and you don't want to be that weak link in that team, you got to get that project from point A to point B. So I've been very trained in the career I'm in that I don't want to hold up a project. So I make sure I check all my boxes and
Right.
move on to the next step. I'm very good at that. But I know that what you're talking about, I have seen people crippled that way. On They never complete it, and they've got all these projects that are incomplete in their
Right.
home, and that becomes a whole psychological dysfunction that needs to be evaluated, or it will hinder you in success.
Absolutely. So I think what I heard you say was you have your tasks written down and you check them off as you go. That's a great tip for somebody that suffers from that nonstop, always working on it. Oh, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. When
Right.
your last task is knocked off and it's as good as you can get it, that's your perfect, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to move on, and if you find that that's a weakness, there's so many therapies you can do to fix that. And I'm
right,
one. I believe in that. I believe, you know, man, I made a mistake today, but you know what? I got the gift of tomorrow. Let it go.
yes,
Let it
absolutely,
go. Brush yourself off. Move forward, and be better. I may not be perfect, but I'm going to be better. But
right.
first, I have to identify my fault. Like,
Yes,
if I'm never wrong, and I'm always a victim, then how can I fix myself?
right. Wonderful.
Right?
What's next, Patty?
Oh, it's never ending. I will never retire. Like, I've got all these things going. Business consultation is my latest thing that I just love. I love giving, and it's great to be paid for my knowledge. So I love doing that. I also I built a home. It's taken me a year and a half, but I built a home in the Bahamas in Treasure Cay. So I've got a hat now for renting a luxury property. Let's see how that works. It's
Right.
on VRBO, all that. That's all new to me, right? Like, don't be afraid to take a step. That was huge endeavor, bigger than I thought.
Right.
But I got to be okay with it because I got to keep moving, right? I got to complete it, and now I got to see what kind of revenue that brings in.
Right.
Yeah.
I've interviewed somebody that does luxury air like luxury rentals, and I'll give you the
Oh, that'd
contact
be
information.
great. Yeah,
I'll
I can
let you.
learn from
He does it
them.
in Costa Rica actually.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
like a huge place on a mountaintop, but
Right.
very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Another new business. So gonna keep chugging, gonna keep doing new fun stuff, evolving always. I love it, Patty. Had such a good time talking with you today. What do
You
you
too.
tell the young lady today
Mhm.
with all the opportunity in front of them? Young woman that wants to start her business and she's looking at that personal guarantee on the contract for her space that she's going to do. What words of encouragement do you give her to say it's going to be okay? Just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of change. Only, if you never change, you never evolve. Don't be afraid. Listen to the gut instinct. Are you ready to take that move? You need to be ready. That's an educated decision. It's like,
Right.
am I ready? Do I know my craft? You don't want to step out there and fail. So as long as you're ready, don't be afraid. It's a sink or swim, and you will swim. You may have to adjust the
Yeah.
strokes.
Get some water up your nose here and there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But think about how boring life would be if we just, was that factory worker. I couldn't do it. So if that lady wants to do that, then that's the first step. That's great. As long as she's, interned and learned the craft, do it. Why not? What's the worst thing that can happen? Especially if you're young. You got time.
Right. Start over.
Right.
You can always go back to the
fail.
job. You can always go back to the job and work for somebody else.
Exactly. You got time
Right.
to fail and hold your head high.
Absolutely. Patty, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we go?
Yeah, well, just thank you for the opportunity for me to tell the story. I hope it helps somebody out there. I love it when it does. So,
Awesome.
reach out to me.
And if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is my name, Patricia Davis Brown Designs, plural with an S on the end, .com. And there's a contact there that you can reach me, and I would love to speak with you.
Wonderful. And we'll put the bio in the description and links to all the Patty's contact information. Thank you so much, Patty. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye. That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. All you have to do to join that text line is send me any question about business or technology. I'll do all the research, and I'll give you an absolutely free, totally unbiased answer. Get to work.